Welcome on into the Utah Blockcast. I'm Steve Bartle, Utah Insider for KSL Sports. This is the Week 2 Fall Camp live stream recording. See if that one works. All right. Man, Week 2. Week 2 of Fall Camp is here. Let's get going, man. Like I said, appreciate everybody hopping in. Definitely excited to do more of these. As I said last week, this is going to be a pretty consistent thing. So excited to get into a groove and stuff with this. And like I said, I want to build, the community here and strengthen, just the interactions here. That was what made the Blockcast what it was back in 2019 when, we got this thing lifted off the ground. So that's going to be my focus, is returning to the glory days. You might see me eating a chicken sandwich and stuff. So yeah, excited about that. Andrew Crane, I'm not going to put you on the pod. The only time I'm going to put you on the pod is when I put you on blast on the pod. All right. Where should we start? Getting into week 2. A lot of good things. So obviously today, coming off of, media availability today, we got to hear from Coach Whittingham, and we got to hear from, essentially the skill players today. So Tobias Merriweather, Larry Simmons, Creed Whittemore, and Hunter Andrews is who we got to talk to today. And then I also got an exclusive one-on-one with another player, which I'll post here, I'll share here, and that's going to be part of tonight's show as well. So excited about for you guys to kind of get to know the players this year. I think this is a pretty good group. I think this is a group that's it's clear that this collection of players, they've come in and, man, they've just gotten to work. That's been a pretty consistent theme with the guys that Utah's brought in. I think it was Creed Whittemore who shared that, they were working really, really hard. They pushed themselves to the limits during their summer workouts and went through some tough practices. So I think this group has come in, and that was one thing that was mentioned to me over the weekend. I had a conversation with, a buddy of mine, and he said that this group has really kind of leaned into the underdog mentality, and I think that's something where Utah is at its best when they've embraced that chip on the shoulder underdog mentality. And that's been something that's been apparent through fall camp, as this group has come in and, they just continue to fight and do a lot of the things that Utah football has been known for over the years and built their reputation on over the years. So I think that's been really encouraging to hear, is that, not only has this group, there's reason to be optimistic in the sense of, what Devin Dampier and Jason Beck and what they mean to this, to kind of this makeover, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. But, coming here, a lot of players didn't experience what Utah went through last year. And that, that could be a good thing, because last year was pretty rough. But, I think they've all kind of bought into, not repeating what happened last year. And, with this defense specifically, I think when you've got guys like Lander Barton and Logan Fano, who are, essentially the heart and soul of that defense, Teo Johnson as well, those guys, they took it to the chin last year, and they're making sure that, everybody on this team understands kind of the mentality to take into this season, that this is, something where we've got to outwork everybody. And I think that's been something that's been really apparent with this, just in conversations with folks that have been around the program, that has been a mentality and something that the players have embraced. So I think that's been really good to hear, is getting kind of back to your brand and your identity, your culture that you've built yourself on over the last decade. So in terms of, what we heard today, from Coach Whittingham specifically. Unfortunately, my phone succumbed to the heat and overheated, unfortunately, so I don't have the video to play, but I've got a quick little summary that I'll run through here. in terms of, what Coach Whittingham shared, and I'll kind of give my thoughts on it as well. So, yeah, it's just how the offense has been performing and how it's come together over this first week. And obviously, I think it's important to understand that, there hasn't, today was actually the first day of full pads. So they haven't been in full pads, but there's been contact and it's been pretty competitive, but today was actually the first day the guys could be in full pads. So full live day, but still, I think Coach Whittingham said that this group has performed really well. They're executing at a high level, and that is something that gets back to the work that these players put in over the summer, with Devin Dampier kind of leading and orchestrating, the player run practices, and that having him in place has been so important and so significant to the offense coming into camp ready to go. And so, Whittingham had a lot of praise for Dampier and how he's performed. He continues to highlight his dual threat ability, and I think that is going to be, an integral part of this season's offense and what leads to offensive success for Utah this year. So, Dampier's leading the way, and he's, based on, a number of updates that I've gotten over the last week, he's playing at a really good level, and his command of the offense is really what is allowing him to perform at such a good level. So, beyond that, obviously we asked, some questions about how the skill players are performing, and, based on what I've heard, this sort of syncs up with what Whittingham shared, that Tobias Merriweather, Daedrin Zipper, and JJ Buchanan are guys that have stood out through the first week. And those are players that have consistently made plays over the first week of camp. And so for Utah fans, that's really encouraging for a couple of reasons. So, it's interesting that you've got a transfer that joined the program, in the spring portal window, didn't get here till the summer. You've got a guy that's been here in Zipperer, who's been here for two seasons now. And, he was making strides, making progress in spring ball. And it sounds like he's continued to make strides as they've gotten into fall camp. And then JJ Buchanan, true freshman that has come in. He was a guy that, a truly explosive, dynamic athlete. I know that he's got a 40-inch vertical or somewhere close to it. That's something he shared with me, and that's been his explosiveness has really kind of been what's allowed, has been kind of the reason that he's been able to stand out. So, with Buchanan, those guys have consistently made plays, and so that was good to hear Whittingham acknowledge those three specifically and mention them by name specifically. I think those guys are probably, maybe at the top of the depth chart. Obviously, it would be something for a true freshman to come in to that tight end room with a guy like Dallin Bentley and others like Otto Tia and Hunter Andrews. But JJ Buchanan has certainly performed well through the first week. Now, I think the key here to keep in mind, and before we dive all into the deep end on these guys and buy all the stock, is the next couple of days. Saturday is going to be the first scrimmage, and the next couple of days, next week or so, is going to be where the physicality ramps up, and that's where we're going to really get a better idea of what these guys are going to bring to the table. So there are encouraging signs, but I think this next week will really be key in determining who Utah can count on, who they can trust as we get closer to the NFL camp and to the start of the season. So that was one thing that he highlighted. And then another guy, Wayshawn Parker. It sounds like he had a great day. Obviously, Utah football tweeted out a video of a touchdown score on a reception, and it sounds like he had a pretty productive day catching the ball. He's also, I think this was kind of the first practice where he showed, the physicality and contact balance that Utah loves in their running backs. He apparently ran with authority today, and so I think, this has been interesting because a lot of the updates at the running back room have come for other players. And so I think this has been actually a pretty competitive situation at running back with D'Kerry Rogers and Wayshawn Parker being at the top of the depth chart. And then they've got a couple guys, Devin Green, Daniel Bray. Racing Guillory has made a good first impression. Again, it's important to keep in mind that he is still just a 17-year-old, but he's still shown some good flashes. And then Bryce Duke is a guy that I think they're fascinated by and want to see him once they get the pads on. So the competition in that running back room, it was good to see. I think there's encouraging signs with Wayshawn Parker, emerging from the group, but this has been a pretty competitive situation through the first week of camp. So, that running back room is going to get a lot of work this season. And I think that's a good thing. You want there to be good, healthy competition. And then just a couple other things. We asked about the backup quarterback situation, and Whittingham shared that this is a dead heat between Isaac Wilson and Bird Ficklin. And, based on what I've heard more in general about Wilson throughout camp than I have Bird. And Whittingham also stated today that Wilson has had a good camp so far. So I think if I had to guess, I think Wilson is kind of edging out ahead, out in front in this competition. And so that'll be interesting to see, over the next few days as we get to Saturday with the scrimmage, who sort of takes that next step. But based on what I've heard, I do think I have heard good things about both. But I think Wilson, I've just heard more in general about Wilson. So that's kind of where I lean. And then the last thing here from Whittingham today, he talked about the cornerback competition opposite of Scooby Davis. And, last week I talked about, this being primarily Blake Cotton and Donovan Saunders, but Jeremiah Caldwell had a good first couple days of practice and sort of put himself more so in the conversation. And it sounds like now even J.C. Hart has had a good first week of practice and has also put himself a little bit more in the conversation. I still think this is Blake Cotton versus Donovan Saunders with Cotton ever so slightly out in front here, but I do think it's encouraging that you've got guys in Caldwell and Hart that are playing well. And then Jalen Moson too is another guy that is acclimating to the system in that. But one guy that I think will have a significant impact on how this secondary is going to look, how it's going to feel, and how it potentially shakes out is Jackson Benny. I think we've talked about him a lot, but he just continues to make plays. And, he's a really good athlete at 6'2", 190 pounds. And, when he's on the field, he's playing a lot in that nickel position. And so that's going to be interesting with what that could potentially mean for Smith Snowden. Whittingham acknowledged that, if they do put Benny on the field, that'll allow them to bump Snowden out to the outside. So I think that could be a really fascinating secondary. You can go back to 2022 when Sione Vaki emerged as kind of a really good nickel. He took over that starting spot over the second half of the season after that bye week. I think it was after that USC game on is when he kind of took hold of that nickel position. And you kind of remember, if you go back and watch games, he was dynamic in coverage, but he added another element of physicality to, around the line of scrimmage that I think was really beneficial to that defense and what allowed them to kind of get into gear that final month and getting into the championship game where, Vaki made a couple plays as well. So, Benny is going to be a guy to keep an eye on. And I think he is definitely, in the mix and putting himself in the conversation to be a guy that sees, a good amount of snaps this season, regardless of, where he's at on the depth chart. I think he's turning into a player that Utah feels they just kind of have to find a way to get on the field. And that's pretty impressive for a local kid out of Olympus who's, was a walk-on and all that. But again, you've got a kid that's 6'2", 190 pounds, and he's a dynamic athlete, a 4'4" type of speed. At that size, I think you're really encouraged by what that can, what sort of element that can provide the secondary. So, it'll be interesting. And I know there's comments coming in and questions coming in, and I'll get to those, later in the show. So, it's going to be interesting, but the competition is definitely ramped up in that secondary. I think what we'll most likely see, Teo Johnson at free safety, Rabbit Evans at strong safety. We'll see Scooby, and then we'll probably see an or on the depth chart between Blake Cotton and Donovan Saunders with Smith Snowden in the nickel. And then, that could potentially be, either Jackson Benny behind him, or it could be Jalen Moson. So, we'll see how that goes. But let's get into, I want to get to my interview with JJ Buchanan here. He is the one-on-one exclusive that I got today. And again, just kind of based on what I had heard over the first week, it sounds like he's a player that has consistently made plays, and is a guy that I think is putting himself into the conversation as a guy that Utah's gonna try to get some looks for this season as a true freshman. So here's my conversation with JJ Buchanan, and again, I hope the volume works this time. So we'll see. Let's get it going here.
JJ Buchanan, first week here at Utah in fall camp. How's it been, man?
It's been really good. I think we're putting in a lot of hard work. The practices, a lot of wear and tear, but it's good. We're getting ready for UCLA.
How big of an adjustment was it, coming from high school and all that, to coming up here to Utah and competing right away?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big adjustment. The DBs are a lot bigger. It's a lot faster pace, especially here. Specifically, the pace is crazy from high school for sure. But I've adjusted well to it. I've risen to the occasion, but it's been difficult for sure.
How has it been with your teammates, getting acclimated with them, building those relationships? What has that been like for you?
Yeah, no, they're all. I mean, this is literally a family. It's family all the way around. All the coaches, all the players, like we're all one. So it's been. I've fit in really well.
So coming out of high school, you were a dynamic athlete, still are obviously.
Yes, sir.
But you had the potential to play a number of different positions. Sounds like you've sort of settled in at this tight end, flex tight end type role. How do you feel how would you assess kind of your comfort level with that spot?
Yeah, no, with the way they're utilizing me right now, I feel like I fit it perfectly. I think I fit that role perfectly how they're using me right now.
What do you feel you bring to that role and to the tight end position specifically?
I think I bring a lot of versatility. You could put me in the slot, you could put me outside. I'll beat a corner, I'll beat a nickel, I'll beat a safety, I'll beat a backer, and you can also bring me down. I'll crack a mic if you want me to, but yeah, I think I just bring a lot of versatility.
I love it. So speaking of that defense, who's giving you the toughest time so far as you've gotten into practice?
We got a lot of good DBs. Teo Johnson, Smith Snowden, Nate Tillman. Those are the guys that I go against a lot, and it's always good work.
And then last thing for me, going back to your recruitment and your commitment to Utah, what led you to come to Salt Lake City and the University of Utah?
Yes, sir. I think, first of all, the culture here is a big thing for me. I'm a big guy on culture. I think the family feeling you get here is just, I gravitated toward it. And at the same time, I feel like I had the best opportunity here to showcase my versatility and my skills. So,
awesome, JJ. I appreciate the time, man.
Yes, sir.
I did it. I figured out the volume. Oh my gosh. That's a game changer, folks. That is a game changer. Woo! Let's go. Oh, sorry. Yeah, JJ Buchanan. Let's talk about that. Yeah, man. JJ Buchanan, he's a guy I think that is going to be interesting to see how he how he handles this thing. So he's coming into a room that is going to be pretty competitive. With Dallin Bentley pretty well established there. Hunter Andrews has really kind of taken to that position as well, and has really kind of turned himself into a guy that I think Utah is going to prioritize in this offense. And so, you've also got Otto Tia, who, he's added another element to this room where his experience at wide receiver has sort of, added a nice little element, a little bit more flexibility even to that role, that flex position, in that tight end room. So, I think, there's reason to be optimistic about JJ, but we've got a long ways to go. And I think over the next week, we'll get a much better idea of, what JJ can potentially bring to the table for Utah this season. I do think there's a lot of hope and optimism around him that he can be a guy that Utah can work into the mix this season. But like I said, he's got a couple guys with Dallin Bentley, Hunter Andrews, and Otto Tia that are going to make this a pretty competitive situation. But I do think there's reason to be pretty optimistic with a guy like that. So it was good to talk with JJ, and I should have asked this in the interview, but I did ask him, just given kind of the connection to Las Vegas, if he had the opportunity to talk with Dalton Kincaid. Obviously, shout out to our guy, longtime blockhead Dalton Kincaid, and he said that on his official visit to Utah last year, he had the opportunity to link up with Dalton Kincaid, and they had a good conversation. And obviously, given the comparison, the connection being Las Vegas, I think there's even more connections and more similarities between these two, where the two of them were hoopers. They were basketball players coming up through high school, and making this transition to football really found a nice position to settle into at that tight end spot, where their athleticism at 6'4", Buchanan is already up to about 220 pounds as a true freshman. I think that's really exciting for him. And so he is somebody, not just because, Kincaid was the last great tight end, but I think there are a lot of similarities even beyond just the Las Vegas tie and all that, as to why you can make those comps to Kincaid. The ball skills, the athleticism, the similar athletes, given that basketball background, I think really translates well to that tight end spot. And I think that is kind of the reason to be optimistic about JJ moving forward. So next up, we had the opportunity today to talk to Tobias Merriweather, Utah's big transfer portal addition in the spring window, and it was good to hear from him. This is another player that Utah had previously recruited 2 times, I think. I know they recruited him coming out of high school, and then also when he initially hit the portal from Notre Dame. I know that there was a little bit of communication, and so now coming to Utah from California, I think there's kind of a lot of optimism around this, in terms of this being the spot for Merriweather to put it all together. Now that he's had a couple years at the collegiate level, he's put himself in a situation where he has to be the guy, and he's excited about that opportunity. So let me pull this up here for Tobias here. Move that at that.
Tobias, you come in the spring transfer portal period. What's the acclimation period been like for you, and just being able to kind of show your talent?
I think I've transferred before, obviously, so I think I'm kind of familiar with how it goes and all the new stuff you have to get used to, and the offense and stuff. They do a good job of teaching us new stuff and getting me acclimated, and everyone's so welcoming, and it's great to be here.
What was their message to you when they were recruiting you to come to Utah this time around?
Just come make a difference. That's really what it came down to. Come make a difference for us, come be a threat for us, and yeah.
What's your chemistry been like with Devin Dampier?
I think it's been good so far. We've made a lot of big plays on the offense. We made some easy, consistent plays, but I think it's been good so far. Throughout the first 5-6 days of camp.
What are your thoughts on Jason Beck's offense and how you've been able to kind of acclimate within it?
Yeah, he runs a very I would say weird style of offense. The way they just do stuff is just not what's the normal offense for, especially in college. But I think it works great, especially for new guys, and we're able to just come in quick, get it down, and run it.
You've played at this level before, but what are you hoping to get out of it this year, knowing that you still got a lot of proof?
Yeah, I think obviously my goal has always been since I was young, to go to the NFL, and that's still what the case is. And I think here is a good place where I can do that.
How comfortable are you with this Utah offense so far?
I think very comfortable. I think I picked up pretty quickly. I feel like I have a good football brain, so it's kind of come second nature to me. But I think guys like already have done a good job of helping me also get in Utah offense.
How's your relationship with Coach Micah Simon?
I think it's great. He's a young guy, and he's really cool. I've had all spectrum of coaches. I've had older coaches, a younger coach. So I think it's been cool to have him. He's kind of chill, but he will make sure we're coaching us well, and he's good with the drill work too.
How have you, I guess, and the other members of the wide receiver room kind of look to establish themselves as the number 1, number 2, and number 3 wide receivers?
Yeah, I don't think really. Everyone kind of thinks that in the back of their head, but really in the front of my brain is not really, becoming number 1, number 2, number 3, whatever that is. It's just coming out, being consistent every day, and worry about the process more than the result.
How has someone like Ryan Davis, who was a part of this offense last year, maybe helped you transition into this offense?
I mean, critical. He's a leader in our room. He comes to work every day and he does it, and then he tells us what to do, and you can watch it, and then he'll ask him questions, and we're just going back and forth. I think both of us are kind of on the older side of college, so we're both able to use our brains and be able to see what we can do and how to manipulate the defense.
How would you evaluate this or wide receiver room? Like, what do you think it is right now?
I think top down, we have like every type of receiver. We have older guys who are just like third down, whatever, consistent guys down low. We have guys that can take it deep. We have guys that can do everything. We have younger guys, older guys. Everyone's getting in the mix. So I think it's a good mix of guys, and we all come to work every day.
What's going to be the key for you this season in terms of, establishing yourself and taking that next step in your game?
I think, like I said, just worrying about the process, not worrying about what happens on Saturdays, what happens at practice. Just worry about the process every day, coming in, watching film, making sure I know the plays, making sure I know what I'm doing, and just working on the process, yeah.
What was it about you? No, you're good. What was it about Utah that was an attractive recruiting pitch to you?
Yeah, I think like I said earlier, just the ability to make a difference. That's really what I'm looking for, just to be in an offense that wants me to be here and wants me to be featured.
How much have you caught on to kind of the mindset of this team didn't like what it was last year, but how do you kind of buy into that?
I think it's easy. I was on a team that didn't win a lot of games last year, and I think nobody likes to lose. And I think coming with Coach Whit, he's a winner, and that's what I love. I love winners. I love the year-round winners because they make you better.
Thanks, Tobias.
Have a good one.
Appreciate you.
I had to go 2 fist pump on that one. Oh man, 2 for 2 on the audio. Your boys figured it out, man. You can teach an old dog new tricks, huh? How about that? Oh man, I feel good about that. You guys have no idea how good I feel about that. But yeah, Tobias, he shared a lot of cool insights there, and I think, for him, this is really an opportunity to come to a program that is looking to get back to that championship contender status. And I think that is something that, when you look at what Utah's been able to accomplish over the last 5 years, a lot of success. These coaches know how to get there, and they know how to win it. And you don't suddenly forget how to do those things. You can kind of lose sight of kind of your path and what's going on. You can get lost in it all, and obviously injuries contribute to all that. But for Tobias, I think this is really a great opportunity for him to come to a team that is looking to get back to championship contender status and also establish himself as, a legitimate, wide receiver 1 type. And I think that is something that Utah was looking for in him. And that was, more or less their pitch to him. Obviously it wasn't, promised to him, but they've evaluated him going back to high school. They've known what he brings to the table, what his qualities are, what his traits are, and they feel really good about what he adds to this room. And I think he made an interesting point that I think in having another conversation over the weekend. This group, this collection of wide receivers, it really fits well together. There's a lot of complementary strengths in this room, where you've got a guy in Merriweather who's 6'4", 200 pounds, and 4'4", 4'5" type of speed. He can be that vertical presence, right? He could be the guy to stretch the defense, to be that threat that defenses have to respect. Then you've got a guy in Larry Simmons who, he found a lot of success in the intermediate and deeper areas of the field at Southern Miss. And you like how those two outside, how they work together. And then, a lot of this group are slot receivers that can do some different things. You've got a Ryan Davis who is, kind of your Wes Welker type. And then you've got a Creed Whittemore and a Manny Carvalho who are more your Britton Covey types who are really good with the ball in their hands and creating after the catch. And then you've got other guys and, Endangered Zipper, who's had a really good fall camp, who, he's a lot like Money Parks, who is also kind of that field stretcher. We saw it last year at times where he can be that vertical presence. You can take shots and he can stretch the field as well. So, really like how these pieces fit together. They really complement one another really well. And I think too, I'm excited to see what Micah Simon can do with this group. You heard it from Merriweather and Simmons and And I think Creed even mentioned something as well, that it's kind of an interesting thing to have Simon as young as he is, but they feel so comfortable around him, and they see how detailed he is in how he coaches and what he demands of these guys. So I think there's these guys have made a good impression through the first week. There's a lot of optimism around this group, but like I said earlier, on this stream, is we're going to learn a lot about this group over the next week, now that these guys will be live and the physicality will ramp up. So we'll get a much better idea of what these guys can actually contribute. But I think there are a lot of good signs with this group, and I think it gets back to, again, the quarterback in place with Dampier, just his leadership, his work ethic, what he's done to kind of reinvigorate the vibes, and his focus on putting in the work, I think has really benefited the offense and these wide receivers specifically, and what's allowed them to get off to a good start in fall camp. Now it's about building, right? Can they continue to elevate it and all that sort of stuff? So that's what I've got with interviews. Now I want to open it up. I want to hear from you guys, or at least read from you guys, because again, I can't share the mic on this stream. But I've got a few questions, and I've got the chat up. I've got I see everybody's comments. I've got a few that I'm going to go back to. I know a few of you have asked a lot of questions, and so I've got questions for you guys. And so as you guys respond, I'll make sure to share them and all that. So here's what I've got for you guys. So I'm going to start. Devin Dampier, does he go over or under 3,500 total yards? Tell me over or under, and what you think that actually looks like. So I think Devin Dampier, and I'm going to pull up some video while we've got it as well, just to get this rolling. Oh, shoot, I need to remove that. There we go. Let's do that. I'll add my face there. Over. Biased you. Over. Duh. Rich Austin. Ooh, going under. 800 rushing, 2,500 passing. Still, that's not bad. And with the type of run game that we're going to see this season, I think that's fair. I don't think that's crazy. I'm going to move myself over here. Maybe. There we go. That way your comments show up a little better. Shaboy Utes Damp will clear that. All right, so we're going over 3,500. PJ. I'm digging it. I am digging it. Very slightly over. Okay, Babushka, I respect it. 3,500 yards. All right. He did, I think he went, 3,900 last year. So I think, I think all thoughts are respectable here. Tyrell. That's sort of where I'm at with Dampier. I think we'll see Dampier. I'm not sure we'll see him eclipse four digits on the ground this year. I think Wayshawn, I think the carry, I think those guys are gonna eat into it. All right. Okay. Over 3,600 total yards. I would love to see him get to 2,800 or above through the air. Would love to see it. Marcus, over 700 rushing, 2,900 passing. That's what I'm talking about, Marcus. Read my mind. Would love to see it. Ooh, this is an important one, guys. I want you to make sure that we all understand. Devin played in the Mountain West Conference last year. I want to make sure that we all understand that and what that means. Just keep that in mind as we talk about this. Uh, Mike chiming in. A lot going on there with that 2,700 passing, and then there's a jumbled mess. It looks like 500 rushing. Increase of talent. See, yeah, I buy that. All right. Let me get to question number 2. What is your biggest concern going into the season? This will be interesting. I'll give you guys some time to think on that answer. But what is your biggest concern going into the season? And I'll kind of chime in. So going back to my own question number 1 with Devin Dampier, I'm going to take the under. I'm going to go under just because I think Wayshawn is going to eat into that production. And I think, Dampier is going to take a different mindset. And so I'm going to go slightly under, but I still think the production is going to come in just under 3,500. So that's where I'm at with Dampier. How do you obtain this footage? uh, uh, Great question. All right, here we go. We got some comments coming in. All right. Biggest concern going into the season, Shaboy Utes, D-line depth. This will be interesting. Obviously Utah is taking an interest. I shouldn't say interesting, but they're, taking an approach that bringing in high school guys that I think is it's a little uneasy with how the game has transformed with the transfer portal. But this is how Utah has buttered their bread over the years, right? Is bringing in these freshmen, and you can go through the years and you can find freshmen that have made an impact. Obviously, this year they're betting on a couple to make big contributions this year. But I think this is where we're going to learn a lot about Luther Ellis as a coach and what he means in terms of these guys' development. So yeah, but understandable, definitely understandable. Biased Ute. Biggest concern is the pass rush. This is going to be interesting because there's been a lot of good things that I've heard about the defensive end group. Obviously, beyond just the depth and the guys that they feel they have in that room, the number of bodies that they have in this room. I'm really excited for Logan Fano and what it means for him that he gets an off season to work entirely on his game and his progression. I'm really excited to see what that translates to. So, but we need to see it. Obviously, there's not a lot of numbers, a lot of production that Utah brings back. So, you're counting on guys to take a big step forward. So I get that. Javelin Joe with the similar concern. Obviously, D-line getting pressure on the QB. D-tier Ute stand passing game worries me. Obviously we're going to have to see it. And you guys, we're not up there at fall camp. We're not watching. But I do think, I'm optimistic with things, but I certainly understand kind of the worry because, you're bringing in a quarterback who again is from the Mountain West Conference. I just want to make sure that point is clear that he's coming from the Mountain West. So that is a thing that people may not be aware of, but he's a guy that, again, I just think the command of the offense is such an advantage for him. It gives him a, not a head start, but it gives him, it eliminates sort of the one part of his acclimation where, you've got a quarterback coming into a new environment. He's got to establish chemistry with his receivers. He's got to learn kind of get it adjusted to the speed of the game. Sometimes, most times in years past, they've had to come in and learn an entirely new offense. And I think that all of that combined has led to a lot of struggles for quarterbacks in those situations. But I think we've seen and why you've seen kind of the shift this past year where you've seen, a John Mateer and a Ben Arbuckle going to Oklahoma as a package deal, this become more of a focus is bringing in an OC and quarterback tandem because what we watched last year with Diego Pavia, he was with his offensive coordinator from New Mexico State or whatever New Mexico university it was, and we saw what that led to for Vanderbilt. So I think his command gives him kind of a head start in his acclimation process, and it's all about just kind of the chemistry. So I think there's reason to be optimistic about Dampier as a passer, but certainly we got to see it. We got to see it. Biggest concern for Rich Austin, Beck not having full autonomy to run his offense. Man, I don't know what it's going to take for Whit to shake that, but it is ingrained in the Utah fan base. Biggest concern, production at receiver. This is going to be one that I think surprises people. There's a lot of easy buttons in this offense for production to come. I think there will be just a lot of easier ways for the passing game to create production. And you saw it in the spring game, right? You saw the dinks and dunks. You saw the screen game. That has been a major point of emphasis, is the screen game going back to spring ball. I think that's an easy way to create a lot of production through the air. So, Beck is, I'm excited to see all that Beck brings to the table. But I think production will be something that I think surprises folks this year. Mike's biggest concern is the D tackles. Yeah, you're going to need a couple guys to step up. You're going to need a couple guys to raise their level of play by the time we get to the season. So certainly understand that. Couple more D tackle concerns. Tim Hughes chiming in here. Biggest concern is for the success we're hoping for. We need D4 to be under on the rushing side, both for his health, D4 being Devin Dampier, and for the surprise when he tucks and runs. Yeah, I think, in watching Dampier, a lot last year, he has an interesting knack for avoiding contact. Not, we heard that a lot last year, that was a point of emphasis for Rising, but I think Dampier actually understands what that means, and you can see it in his game where, he just kind of slithers his way out of contact and all that sort of stuff. So, I think it's certainly something, again, we're going to have to see it in season, but going back to last year and what I saw with him and sort of evaluating him, he does have a way about him that just kind of, he just has a natural way of avoiding taking big hits. He's still getting tackled and all that sort of stuff, which can lead to injuries, but he has a good sense of avoiding, the big hits. Couple others. Running back depth, the biggest concern. Wow, running back depth. They've got a lot of guys that they feel good about. Wayshawn McCary, Bryce Duke, Devin Green, Daniel Bray. You've got Omar Shaw that they feel good about. So there's a lot of depth. And I think, what we've learned over the last couple of years is that depth is really important at this running back spot. And so I think that's been a point of emphasis. But again, I understand it. Let's see here. All right, I'm going to get to the next question because I want to get through this. If you could buy stock in one freshman to be the most impactful this season, who are you buying into? So again, if you could buy stock in one freshman to be the most impactful this season, who are you buying into? Quick one. Ben with the response. Buchanan. All right. Yep. Another JJ. I see you, Craig. I see you, dog. Yes, Tyrell. I'm going to change this because it's driving me nuts. There we go. Dylan Curtis. Yeah, Shub. It's been interesting. Haven't heard a whole lot about Curtis so far in camp. But again, going back to spring, was really encouraged by the leg, man. It's legit. there's juice in that leg. Obviously, accuracy is going to be something that we won't learn until it's live and the pressure is on to actually perform. So we'll see. But I do think Curtis has the makings of being a really good kicker for Utah. Tingus Pingus, another one, another vote for Dylan Curtis. Ute shoot Carson. You've been listening to me for a long time. Ute shoot. I know that much. I've been talking about him for a while. Carson. Yep. Another one. Dylan Curtis. Another one. I'm loving the love for the kicker. Put some respect on the kicker. All right. Last one here. What is Utah's toughest game on the schedule? Again, what is Utah's toughest game on the schedule? Oh my, Ben. Could you imagine? Jerry Combs. I love it. At Baylor. Interesting. But I don't disagree. Texas Tech or BYU? All right. Word. Shout out to the Texas Techers. BYU, easy peasy. That's going to be a tough one. That will be a tough one. Man, Baylor. Really? Wow. K-State at home. Yep, that'll be a tough one. I'm surprised. I thought there would be a surprising response in the comments, but I'm not seeing the surprising response I thought I'd see. Baylor is definitely caught me by surprise. I did not see that. Another vote for BYU. I'm just trying to get names on the feed. I'm trying to show everybody love here. Another vote for Baylor. Where are we at? Where'd I get to? Texas Tech or Baylor. Yep. ASU. Okay. Throwing that one up there. I'm surprised. I thought I would see it at least once. I thought I'd see Colorado. And look, you hear that and you're like, okay, I don't know about that, Steve. Shut up. But listen, you've got Arizona State at BYU. Then you come home to Colorado. Colorado's be coming off a bye the week before. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough one. So I thought I would see that one. But I get it. Texas Tech, BYU. Crane is back. I gotta show the boy love. As tough as that may be sometimes, gotta show the boy love. UCLA. It's gonna be an interesting one, without a doubt. I wish I could put that on the feed there, Shaboy Utes. I wish I could, but I can't. Can't, man. I work for KSL, dog. Come on. All right. Let's see here. What else do I got? If you guys got questions for me, I'd love to hear them. Oh, that's what I was going to do. Sorry, let me get back to that. All right. I've got questions here. If you guys have questions, please feel free. There's a chat feature in the live stream. Please feel free to throw some questions my way. I'll take a couple minutes and answer some questions here. Going back to the beginning of the live stream, Triple T asked, how weird is it to see this much optimism from Whit at fall camp from such a new group? And, that is interesting. But again, it's something that I've, belabored now at this point. But, I really think Devin Dampier, it's not just that he's, a charismatic guy. He's come in and he's put in the work and he's brought everybody along with him. Oh, and I realized that I need to take a comment off of here. Sorry, you Utah man, sir. I'm not just gonna leave that up. I gotta find it though. But yeah, I just think it is due in large part to um, Dampier, his leadership and what he's done to kind of turn the ships around. So I think there's it's not just optimism for the sake of being optimistic. I think it's warranted, and I think the players have done a good job of giving the coaches reasons to be optimistic. So it is a little bit weird, especially given last year's struggles and just kind of the vibe with everything, right? It was, everything felt worn down and frustrating and all that sort of stuff. So, it is a big change, but I think it's because, players have earned it. So I think that for me, at least, is the reason why I think there's this much optimism. I do think, Witt, it may put on a bit more of an optimistic tone with us in the media than than how he is in coaching this team. So I do think there is something to that as well. Next question, this one from St. Cheesy Ute. Who of all the new transfers is going to make a day one impact during first game at UCLA? Well, Devin Dampier, duh. But in terms of the new guys, I do think there's reason to be optimistic that Tobias Merriweather can be that guy. Can be a guy that Utah features in the passing game as sort of the featured outside receiver that this offense needs. What sort of production does that translate to? I don't know, but I think Merriweather has done a lot to sort of establish himself in that role. So I'm gonna lean there. I'm gonna lean towards Merriweather as in terms of the spring guys that came in and over the summer. So that's where I lean. Next question from PJ: do they want Snowden to play outside or nickel? Well, they just want him on the field. Like that above all else is they want him on the field and they want the best 11, the next 10 best players on the field with him. So if that means, if that leads to him being outside, they'll play him outside. If that leads to him being inside, in the nickel, I do think that is where he fits best right now. But again, this Jackson Benny kid, man, I think there are real legs to Benny and what he can potentially bring to that position where you could move him outside. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see, how that defensive secondary shakes out, and what it ultimately looks like come the season. But I think Snowden is a guy that Utah, is going to put in those positions to be that CB1 type, right? Like what we saw with Clark Phillips, what we saw with Jalen Johnson, that star coverage type of stuff. I think we'll see that. I think Snowden has put in a lot of work this offseason to take advantage of this year and to put his best foot forward. Based on what I heard today, I think there's a lot of reason to be excited. 3 reasons, 3 takeaways, specifically as reasons why to be excited about Snowden today. So yeah. Dakota Canales asks, how's Tia looking at tight end? Honestly, I think he's a good fit there. I think he's a much better fit there than at wide receiver, given his size. He's a legit 6'4", 235. He was bigger than Landon King was, when he was working as a wide receiver. And, now making that move, I think it's going to benefit him a lot. And I think it works well with everybody else around him too, where he can be that flex tight end. He can be a physical presence on the inside. He can be a bigger inside target for Dampier. I think that's going to benefit him really well. So yeah. Patch Russell with a big question. Is that a Blockcast microphone? And Patch, you're dang right it is. Yeah, I've got the Utah Blockcast microphone working at practices now, so excited about that. Like I said, KSL's been great to me. I'm really excited for what this season is going to look like with the Blockcast specifically, and excited for what it means for Utah fans as well. So let me get to some more questions here. This one from Andrew Crane. I hate you. Question: who are you higher on as an NFL prospect, Fano or Lomu? This is such a fascinating question, because you know, going back and watching film last year on those two, Fano was a guy that he put it all together last year. Technically, he's always been advanced. Technically, that's been his strength, his asset, and what has made him so good is he's just been a step ahead. He's been ahead of the curve technically. His athleticism is also a big reason why. But adding the size that he did really helped him to become that physical presence, that dominating presence at times last year, and that really rounded out his game. So he played at a much higher level, from the athleticism, the strength, the technical aspects of his game. He's obviously at a much higher level than Lomu. But when you go back and you watch Lomu, he played just as efficiently in terms of pressures given up, sacks given up. I don't think he had a penalty last year, but when you watch him, he still has a good amount of work to do technically, where he's got to clean up some of his footwork. He's got to clean up some of his angles and just executing protections a little bit better. And so when you compare the size between the two, I think Lomu is slightly taller. He's got longer arms, and that I think Lomu has a slightly higher ceiling, but he's got a little bit of ground to gain on Fano in terms of being that overall prospect. So in terms of being a surefire thing, I'll side with Fano. But in terms of highest potential, highest ceiling, I'll go Lomu. So next question. Let's see here. Is that a question, Tim? Apologies. I'm gonna go to the next question there, Tim. I apologize. Tyrell with the important question: is there media availability Saturday? Currently, there is not. So I apologize. There is not media availability. There might be. I don't know. I know that Utah was working on some things, but I don't know exactly what. So, but as of right now, we will not be up there on Saturday to hear about the scrimmage. So we'll see. Maybe that changes. Ben with the question: over under stadium at the Rose Bowl being 65% full for the UCLA game. Man, you know what? I'm gonna take the over. I think there's a lot of excitement about Nico. I think a lot of people are just learning about Nico in the UCLA fan base, and how what sort of talent he was coming out of high school. I think they're just kind of learning his name now, so there will be a lot of interest, and then from there, as long as Utah takes care of business, I think I would take the under the rest of the season on that. Let's see. Shub with a valuable question. How's your day going, Steve? And I appreciate those questions. It means a lot. Day's going great. And yeah. Who is the vibes guy on the team? Ooh, the vibes guy. There's a few different vibes. You've got Spencer Fano, who's just kind of beats to his own drum, man. He is such a fascinating. Logan Fano is a great vibes guy. Dampier has brought the vibes as well. I would say that is kind of the upper tier in terms of vibe guys on the team. BTS podcast. Shout out to BTS, man. Hope you're doing well, brother. what freshman has the best chance to contribute right away this year? I'm not going to switch it up. He's a guy that I've been talking about over the last year, Carson Kafusi at defensive tackle. I think he's going to be a guy that, puts himself in that rotation. And I think there's a lot of confidence in him and how he's performed so far. But again, like I said earlier in the show with a couple other guys at other positions, this next week is going to be really telling in terms with regard to Kafusi and the defensive line specifically. Now that they're live, now that they have a scrimmage coming up, we're going to learn a lot about these freshmen, but I'm still going to go with Kafusi. Just him being with the program since the winter, and he's up at a really good weight. He's up over 300 pounds last I was told, and so I feel really good about Kafusi being a guy that contributes. Now, there's a few other guys that I think will make an impact. I think Dylan Curtis is on the short list. I think JJ Buchanan is putting himself, in that mix. Mana Carvalho similarly, and so yeah. But I'm gonna go with Kafusi. So that's my guy. Let's see here. Andrew with the question. So yeah, talked about this a little bit, but with the cornerback position, opposite of Scooby, it's Whittingham said today it's a 3 to 4 man race with which would be Blake Cotton, Donovan Saunders, Jeremiah Caldwell, and then JC Hart, the guy that came in the transfer during the spring portal window. And so within that group, I think, it's Blake Cotton versus Donovan Saunders, a little bit of a gap. Jeremiah Caldwell, a little bit of a gap. JC Hart, but those bottom two are certainly gaining ground and putting themselves more into the conversation with that mix. And at the very least, them playing well and closing the gap, I think is a good thing for the depth at that position. You go back over the years and Utah has rotated, cornerbacks opposite of their star guy, right? You go back to 2019, it was Tariq Lewis and Josh Nurse. You go back before that, it was Brian Allen and Reggie Porter before that. So, Utah's done this where they've rotated a couple guys at that spot and just having the difference in terms of body types, different athletic qualities. Utah likes the depth that they have there. I think guys are playing well. So that's sort of how that's shaking out. Blake Cotton versus Donovan, and then Jeremiah Caldwell and JC Hart. Witt owns Riley asks over under catches for Smith Snowden at 15. Ooh, catches, I'm going to say under. Touches, it'll be close. Catches under. Next question. Tyler has it. What up, Tyler? Which edge rusher, not named Logan Fano, leads the team in sacks this year? Ooh, not named Logan Fano. This is going to be interesting. So Utah's got a couple guys that I think kind of fit that designated pass rusher mold. Lance Holsclaw, Jackson Jones, Paul Fitzgerald even. Then you've got guys in Cash Dillon and John Henry Daly, who I think are more of your full-time defensive ends. So to me, this is going to be a question of, snap count, right? Who plays the most? Who gets the most opportunity in these pass rush situations? That kind of complicates this question. So I'm just going to side with who I think plays the most at this position. And, that's going to boil down to, Henry Daly and Dillon. And I think Dillon, based on the offseason that he's had, I think there's a promising trajectory for him. I think he's going to be a pretty good player, when his career is over. And I think his career gets going this season. So I'm going to say Dillon, just because I think the snap count lends itself to more opportunities with that question. But I still think, we're going to see a number of guys get opportunities to get after the pass rusher this year. So that'll be interesting, to say the least. Let's see. From Colby. Shout out to Colby. I need to get down to Gladstone, brother. I keep looking. I just can't quite get there. Colby, does Parker rush for 1,000 with Dampier being so dynamic, both with his arm and leg? So yeah, this is going to be interesting, right? So with Dampier coming in, rushing for over 1,100 yards, Parker coming in with about 740 yards last year. I am of the opinion that I think it's more likely that those two flip, right? Where it's Parker this year that rushes for 1,166 yards, and it's more likely that Dampier rushes for 735 yards this year. So that's my opinion. I think Parker becomes kind of the bell cow with Dampier being the complement to the workhorse. So at New Mexico, he had to be the guy. He was the primary guy. He doesn't need to be that this year. He can be the guy that is opportunistic, and I think that is going to be a difference this year compared to what we saw last year. I still think Dampier is going to be dynamic with the ball in his hands. I still think the designated run and designed run. I still think those are going to be have a presence in this offense. But I just think with Parker in place and with the depth that they have at running back, that they become the focal point of the run game, and Dampier becomes the complement to it. So that's my opinion, but we'll see. Dampier, he's got full command of this offense. Shoot, just trust him. Is Barton a tight end or fullback on offense? Yeah, he's tight end. That's all that's all. Tight end. Trying to get to any other questions. Rich Austin. How's Kump doing at center? And who is behind him on the depth chart? That's an interesting one. So Alex Harrison has been the primary backup at center. Going back to spring ball, I think Kump has based on some of the updates that I've gotten, I think Kump has really taken a good step forward with his game. And I think the guys around him also contribute to that. So I think there's reason to be, optimistic about Kump and what he means for this offensive line. And I think this group has certainly played up to sort of the hype, but we'll learn a lot more about him over the next week. So, all right. I think that'll do it for me. We did over an hour in the live stream. I appreciate all of you guys for hopping in and chiming in. Definitely want to do this more often, especially during post game stuff and get this going. Appreciate you guys for hopping in and making this what it is. Excited for what's to come, and I'll have this posted to the podcast feeds, to YouTube by the end of the night. And then I'll have another episode coming Friday. I'm supposed to talk to Brett Ciancia tomorrow. And so that'll be the episode on Friday. Me and Pick Six Previews will have a nice conversation. So appreciate you all. Yeah, man.